Welcome to Personal Development Mastery Podcast Special Episode 326, and this is indeed a very special episode, coming after my experience last week of serving as crew member for Tony Robbins and 10,000 participants at UPW Unleash the Power Within event in Birmingham in the UK. It was the first live event of that scale that I attended after a long time. It was actually the first one after the COVID years. And what made this crew experience even more significant and memorable is the fact that I served in the fire team of the crew, which is the ones responsible for creating the firewalk experience for the participants during the first night of the event. In case you haven't been to UPW, the firewalk is walking barefoot along 10 feet of burning hot coals. So I was honored to volunteer as crew. It was my third time crewing, and first time I was part of the team that built the fire and made the firewalk possible. I am grateful that I have contributed in a way to the transformation of 10,000 people who walked on coals last Thursday, doing something that they never thought it would be possible for them before. So, in this podcast episode, I will describe my learnings and my insights from the experience. Before I do that, I will very briefly share, maybe if you haven't listened to my story before, that in 2017 I attended Unleash the Power Within, a Tony Robbins event in London. That was my first time, and it was one of the most empowering and transformative experiences of my life. And you can find out more about it if you want on previous episodes where I talked about it, and I will put the link for those episodes in the show notes. The previous time I crewed the live event was in 2019. It was an immensely gratifying experience. The sense of contribution was deeply fulfilling, as well as the sense of belonging and growth. So I was looking forward to serving again. I was about actually to go in 2020, but then COVID happened and everything was cancelled. One thing I realized about crewing the previous time was that crewing is about serving and leading at the same time. It is about teamwork, about embracing uncertainty, and about being flexible and resourceful. And these are traits that are extremely useful to have in life. Don't you agree? So let me now give a brief explanation about what the fire team is about so that you understand what is involved there. So the fire team works separately from the rest of the crew because we spent the whole first day of the event, while the participants and the rest of the crew are inside with Tony. The fire team is in the parking lot outside. And we first have to clean and sweep the parking lot because there will be 10,000 barefoot people walking there in the evening. So we need to make sure that there won't be anything on the ground. And then we need to set up the 26 fire lanes that were there this year. The fire lanes is where the hot coals will be laid on and people will walk on. And of course, the most important task we had was to build the fire that would provide the hot coals, so that in the evening we will have enough hot coals for 10,000 people to walk on. So it is quite manual labor. Some parts of the day are not very pleasant, and I will actually come back to that later on. And you may be wondering, why did I want to join the fire team? Why did I want this experience? And of course, now that it's finished, I can easily reflect back on it. But before I joined, I had written down the main intentions that I had for the event, and I will mention the 4 main ones, the more prominent ones. And they were connection, growth, contribution, and self-belief. And I will refer back to these intentions later on because they have been fulfilled in a beautiful way. And now that I've given a little bit of background of what the fire team is, a little bit of my crew in background, and also the significance of Tony Robbins' event in my own personal development journey, I will share with you a chronicle, shall we say, of the event as I experienced it, and I will highlight the learnings, the lessons that I've learned last week, or insights that I had during the event. So the first day of the crew is actually called day 0. It's the day before the event starts, where all the crew must meet and train. And one of the things that I learned being in the crew room that morning, because in the afternoon the fire team we moved to our own headquarters. So one of the most important things that resonated with me that morning in the crew room was something that the lead crew facilitator, Rich Waterman, who I've actually spoken with in the past on the podcast, he talked about being in a beautiful state, and he spoke about presence. Our presence being not in our mind space, but in our heart space, feeling appreciation and gratitude. That is the beautiful state, your presence. And the way to go there is to breathe, with breathing. So that was my insight, or a reminder, if you want, that it's simple to be in a beautiful state, to have presence, to connect with your heart space and feel gratitude in the moment, in the present moment. So thank you, Rich, for that insight. One other thing that I learned, and it had such a big impact when I heard it, and then I kept on hearing it over and over because it was a motto actually. It was something that David Goggins said: don't quit when you're tired, quit when you're done. And when we were doing our training for the fire team, our captain, Bill Keefe, who I will speak about more later on because he also had a big impact on me. So he told us that during the next day, when we will be building the fire, we will have the opportunity to test what our limits are, or what we believe our limits are. And when I say limits, I mean not only physically, but also mentally and emotionally. And let me say here, so that you have an idea of what I mean, that we started that day at 8, we started working at 8 in the morning, and we finished at 3 a.m. So it was a very long day, almost 20 hours. So when that point comes that we reach that perceived limit within us, then is the time to remember that. Don't quit when you're tired, quit when you're done, and realize that we are capable of doing much more than we think we can if we're pushed and if the right circumstances are there. And I will share more about that in a little while because it was one of the biggest insights I had. I could probably be going on forever describing my experience, but the only other really memorable thing that I will share from the day before the event was the amount of synchronicities that happened for me. So among thousands of people, because on that day many participants were there to register, I came across a few people that I really wanted to meet, and I knew that they were at the event, and it was mind-blowing when, I was walking in one direction, and then I hear Ricky, for example, calling me Aggie, and realizing what are the chances of meeting like this in a place full of thousands of people going back and forth. So this happened to me with 5 different people over those days, and 3 of them happened one after another after the other. So it was mind-blowing in terms of how all the circumstances to be orchestrated in such a way that these incredible or seemingly impossible quote-unquote coincidences happen. It's the synchronicities. So let's now move on to the actual day 1 of the event, the firewalk day. Participants started coming in the morning. We were already busy at that time, sweeping the car park and laying the turf for the fire lanes, getting and running around with wheelbarrows, getting firewood, setting up the huge turf that the firewood would be set on, and then set the wood itself in a specific way or pattern. And I won't tire you with the details, but I will tell you what I realized, and that goes back to the intentions that I shared with you earlier that I had set for the event. I realized the sense of connection and the sense of contribution. There was an incredible sense of teamwork that I experienced, or brotherhood and sisterhood, if you want. I experienced bonding with other people, seeing their work ethic and their determination and how willing they were to work and help and contribute. That was instantly motivating me, and I suppose the others as well. We would motivate each other by our ethic and our behavior. We had some outstanding leadership by our fire captain Bill and the 2 assistant captains, Jeff and Ellen. Bill was one of the most inspiring leaders that I had the privilege to meet and serve with, and I learned so many things from him, some learnings that will stay with me forever. So my gratitude to you, Bill, for having this impact. So toward 10 o'clock at night, everything was ready to go. The coals were burning hot. All the fire lanes, all the teams were set up, ready to welcome the participants. My role during the firewalk was to hold, move and protect a wheelbarrow full of hot coals. At some point the gates opened and 10,000 people, in the state induced by Tony Robbins all day, 10,000 people flooded in. Going past the 2 lanes that were on either side of me must have been hundreds of people going past them. And before I share with you my big insight from the day and the whole event really, just to give an understanding of what happened, after all the participants had walked on the hot coals barefoot, then the crew did theirs, and then us, the fire team, we were the last ones that also had the experience of walking. That was my 3rd time doing the firewalk. It is a beautiful and empowering experience. One realization that I made that day, because after everything had finished, we had to stay there and clean the car park, and it was a real mess with the coals, the burnt turf. It was not smelling very nice. So what I found and learned about myself, and that's the first out of the 2 big insights that I had. So the first insight was how much energy, or how much more energy I have in my body than I perceive that I do. if I am in the right environment, with the right people, doing the right task, being in the right state. When all these factors are combined together, I have much more energy than I ever thought that I did. So never through that 20-hour day, not at any point, I felt like I had reached a limit. I had an excess of energy, and that was a great realization that I can push myself much more than I perceive. But for the right reasons, in the right environment, and most importantly, with the right people. And before I share with you my biggest insight from the day, which was actually the biggest insight I had from the whole experience, I will give a quick shout out here to the other 3 members of my fire squad. So Heike, Sof and Brad, I'm grateful for you. And coming back to my biggest realization, my biggest insight from the day. My role, as I explained, was holding a wheelbarrow full of hot coals. And my task was to focus right in front of me to my team members whenever they wanted to pick up coals, because we needed to move and we needed also to protect the wheelbarrow from the participants, or the other way around actually. So my role was to be very focused on the rest of my team, while at the same time there was chaos around me. There was chaos. There were people clapping, singing, dancing. There were drums playing. There were people on a bus, people shouting excitedly that they had just completed a firewalk, and so on. So my role required me not to be distracted by any of that. And believe me, it was easy to be distracted. However, because of the responsibility of it, I focused right in front of me. I controlled my breathing, I grounded myself, and then all the pandemonium that was going on around me moved to the periphery. It was not the focus. It was still happening, but I could see it on the peripheral vision, not at the forefront. And the realization that I had, the biggest insight I had from the event, is that this was a metaphor for life, because many times life throws at us chaos that maybe we're not expecting. And when this happens, if we maintain our presence, our focus, our breathing, our grounding, then we are not directly involved in that chaos anymore. We are not carried away by it. It still exists, it's still there, but it moves to the periphery, not the forefront of our focus. It's like being a big rock in the middle of the river. The water goes around the rock doesn't care about which direction the water is going. The rock is there. It does not get carried away. So this was my biggest insight from the event, and to start concluding this chronicle, then on the next day, the fire team, we had to finish tidying up the parking lot, and then in the afternoon we had our debrief of the event, where every single one of us, we were 55 fire teamers, so every single one of us stood up and shared his or her magic moment from the event. When I stood up, I shared what I just shared with you a minute ago about being the rock in the river. While my other fire team members were sharing their own aha moments and their own personal moments, vulnerably, authentically, I found myself laughing, I found myself crying, I found myself inspired, I found myself moved, I found myself connected. The debrief lasted about 5 hours. We were all their sharing. It was a beautiful, a gorgeous, majestic experience. Really memorable, remarkable. And really it solidified the bonding and the connection. It is true what they say, that the fire team is a family. Now that I have experienced it, I understand it. Then after that, the event had another 2 days. Our role as fire team had finished, but of course we were free to join the rest of the crew and take on some different tasks. Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within is a very transformative and powerful experience, whether you go there as a participant or if you go there as a crew after you have participated. For me, it was a delight and a privilege to be there again, and I am grateful to have contributed to the transformation of 10,000 people who walked on hot coals that Thursday night, doing something that they never thought it would be possible for them. Some of the biggest milestones in one's life journey happen in places like this, when you have an experience or a realization that really shifts your thinking, your behavior, your actions, and your results in life. Crewing as fire team last week was an experience that I will always cherish and remember fondly, and I have already renewed my participation in the fire team next year at the UPW, which will happen in Germany in September 2024. So if you have attending a live Tony Robbins event in your bucket list, there will be few opportunities to do so. September 2024, set the intention and make it happen if you're going to go there. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope my story today and what I shared resonated within you to some level. And my wish and my intention also is to have given you something like a spark, something that was ignited within you when you heard my insights and my experience. And that thing that was ignited in you, I wish for you that it will lead you to taking some kind of action about it, doing some application of it. And a quick update about the podcast. We will remain in weekly episodes for the time being until the end of the summer, and then we will go to 2 episodes a week again. And I have some changes coming up, some surprises coming up, so stay tuned. And if anything that I spoke about today resonates with you, please connect with me, email me, agi@agikeramidas.com, or on social media, message me. Let's connect. I would love to hear whether you've been to a Tony Robbins event, what was your experience? Until next time, stand out, don't fit in,